What a great pleasure it is to be asked to deliver this year's Reith Lecture, and to such a distinguished audience. Both of you. The subject I've chosen for my address is innovation. Innovation and the British. Now, a simply staggering number of innovations have come from Britain over the years. They range from the invention of the steam engine to such simple everyday works of genius as the zip fastener. A good old zip. Pardon? Oh. The British have led the way in new ideas for centuries. Think of Isambard Kingdom Brunel's first iron-built steamer. Think of Dr. Jenner's discovery of vaccination, Frank Whittle's invention of the jet engine, Fleming's discovery of penicillin, Baird's invention of television, the radio telescope, and bringing us right up to date, who but the British could have invented Prince Philip? The list is almost endless, and some of the most brilliant innovations, of course, came from our Victorian forefathers. For example, did you know about the underwater bicycle? Invented by Mr. Will Richardson. Now, note how both arms and legs are brought into play. In 1877, Commander Chain proposed a voyage to the North Pole using 3 linked balloons. In answer to the question, what about the return journey, the commander dismissed it contemptuously with the remark, "Our first duty is to get there." A very British attitude. And then there was this quite indispensable item. It's called a hat conformator. It has over 600 movable parts, which give the local hat shop an infallible method of determining the exact shape of the human head. Pinheads, big heads, everybody gets a perfect fit in hats. And finally, how about Mr. Atkins' device for supporting the fingers of tired piano players? They tell me Liberace had one of these made in solid gold, and his mama loved it. But perhaps the greatest Victorian invention of all was this, the flush water closet. Designed by a gentleman whose name is commemorated at least once a day by every person in the civilized world, Mr. Thomas Crapper. Gentlemen, let us bow our heads for a moment in memory of the revered name of Thomas Crapper, flushed with success. Now, of course, it's not just mechanical objects that the British excel in inventing. Plenty of the world's major sports were British in origin. Soccer, cricket, rugger, and for the true British upper crust, the real elite, a game they play at Eton College, the Eton Wall Game. You see, the idea is for the team playing left to right, well, sort of top to bottom, to get the ball, is there a ball? Well, anyway, the ones in the funny hat, well, in the other, is there a ball in it? I don't really know if there's a ball in it, no. Well, the ones in the funny hat, the other funny hat, not those funny hats, the ones, anyway, you can only play that if you're a real gentleman, born and bred. In the field of government, of course, we British practically invented the whole idea of free speech. And then, of course, there is that truly British innovation. The one thing that cools our tempers and keeps our nerves steady in time of crisis, which helped us to repel those nasty Nazis, the great British cup of tea. We soon had the bounders in full retreat. Now, in the world of the arts and entertainment, there have been some truly great British innovations. For example, our artists have learned how to do without expensive studios. And take the theatre and ballet. While foreign nations need expensive theatres with lots of scenery, here in England we manage to cut things down to a few twigs and hankies. Now, of course, a lot of this inventiveness has to do with the fact that the British have always been a seafaring nation. They've always been great travellers. Everyone knows that Sir Walter Raleigh invented the potato. He used to smoke 20 a day. And then the British conquered India. From there, our ancestors got the idea of taking a bath once a week, and they also brought back the idea of curry. But this did not satisfy British appetites, and so we rapidly invented curry and chips, followed, of course, by a cup of tea. And while we're on the subject of food, here's an innovation that any specialist in the audience will recognize. It's the Wall's snow fruit, so called because snow fruit in it. At the same time, let's clear up a popular misconception about rude signs. No, it was not, in fact, Sir Winston Churchill who invented the first rude sign. It was, again, the Walls Ice Cream Company, who had the nation's children making signs like this all over the place. And you, mate. And you! Which brings me to the subject of humour. Was humour a British innovation? Many people think so. You remember the famous early royal jest at the Battle of Hastings? King Harold's shout of, "Middle for diddle!" One in the eye for Harold. British humour does change over the years, of course. We've come a long way from the classics of Punch magazine. Thank heavens. Take this for a sample. Her Ladyship. "We shall begin with a square dance, and I shall want you, Wilkins, to be my partner." Wilkins. "Certainly, my lady, and afterwards I presume we may dance with whom we like." Boom, boom. Today, however, we have reached new heights of sophistication. Here we are, look. Where does a 10-foot gorilla sit? Anywhere he likes. Friends, I reckon that's good enough to win a rally chopper bicycle. I mean that most sincerely. Now, one of the most important areas where British innovation is seen at its best is in the grocery business. A whole generation of kids have grown up who know that they haven't had a proper breakfast unless they hear those famous sounds, snap, crackle, and pop, yes. Even egg and bacon isn't considered satisfactory any longer. So I have personally designed this set of captions. There's only £1.50 for the lot, which any mother can stick into Jimmy's breakfast to give the right effect no matter what he's eating. Put them into grapefruit, bacon and eggs, and sausages there, and they really, all these inferior breakfasts, porridge, of course, makes a world of difference to porridge. That goes down a treat. All these unsatisfactory breakfasts, you see, makes them really attractive to Jimmy. There we are, and it really does work. Great. Now, I don't regard myself as a Barnes Wallis. Nevertheless, there are plenty of situations, even in daily life, where the British genius for innovation comes to the fore and helps me out of an awkward situation. Oh. Yes. Thank you, Barnes. For example, I don't know if you've ever tried to install a mains electrical circuit under the floorboards. I was doing that recently, and I found I'd have to take up all the floorboards in the entire house. So I thought about this, and then the answer came to me. I took up one floorboard, and then I got hold of my little Tibbles. That's a cat. And I tied the wire to his tail, put him under the floor, put the floorboard down, rushed into the other room, prized up another floorboard, and lo and behold, out popped Tibbles carrying the wire. I plugged it in, switched it on, and what happened? The cat's eyes lit up. Well, it seemed a good idea at the time, didn't it, Tibbles? But you see, good ideas just aren't enough. You've got to follow them through. What I'm holding here is a cat's eye. Nothing to do with Tibbles. It's the sort that you see on over 1 million miles of British country roads. A simple work of genius that's made life safer on the roads for our whole generation. Probably thousands of lives have been saved by these beautifully simple little things. And there's the chap who dreamed them up. Percy Shaw from Halifax. A very ordinary fellow indeed. Not an engineer, not even very well educated. And he had the idea as far back as 1933. And he was so convinced of his own judgment that he went straight out and had 50 of them manufactured and installed in a stretch of road at his own expense. Next year, he founded a company and got the local authorities interested, then the government, and within 10 years, half the roads in Britain had cat's eyes installed. And the whole world followed suit. So the moral is simple. If you want to be in the happy position of Percy Shaw, paying £34,000 in income tax in 1 year, yes, he actually did, then you've got to back your own judgment. You've got to go all out on the exploitation of every good idea that comes your way. And so you're thinking, you don't have the scope for innovation and exploitation? Well, I think I can prove that you probably do, whether you're in manufacturing, marketing, or sales. Just watch this. In the 1920s, someone had a bright idea. They tried it out and they made it work, and it really took off. But we don't have to go back into history to find good ideas. I happen to have a whole family of dedicated Walls ice cream consumers, and we reckon you've had some great ideas in the last couple of years. So stick around. There could be something just as interesting happening in 1977.